Hello, ladies and gentlemen. As you may have been indicated to by said pylon, it's Day 9 Daily number 413, part number 3, where we're looking at the wonderful, delightful style of Millennium Feast, who's demonstrating the power of the Stalker and the Gateway. Oh, I'm so ripped. Oh, yeah, if I ever flex, I have to do it like this. Not only as to cover up any unsightly pit stain, but also to do my impersonation of me playing Amnesia. Ah! Remember that? Cool. In part 1, we introduced the basics of the opening. Went pretty in-depth on the timings of the various probes and chrono boosts especially, and when those gateways pop down. We've seen this great Stalker aggression pop up again and again. In part 1, to see the way that it cut off all those early gas-based aggressions from ever getting off the ground from Terran. In part number 2, we saw a way to put a lot of pressure on an early expanding Terran and set ourselves up nicely for the mid-game. In this game, we're going to see another variation where we're going to see Feast go up against Slayer's MMA, when MMA does a very aggressive 2 barracks play. So cool, let's go ahead and speed through the beginning, chrono boost, and we're going to have another immediate chrono boost right when we're halfway between the 4. Whoosh, there it goes. And then we're going to go ahead and build this on 15. There it is. You saw how he thought about building it and stopped and then built it. Doesn't need it very early on. Right when we have another chrono boost, we do a 3rd chrono. And once his geyser's finished, really not going to value putting guys in gas. You saw a little bit of autopilot kick into gear as he threw some units into gas there, but he's going to go ahead and wait a little while to put that in. A 4th chrono boost on those probers. Okay, so what's the order now? We get a zealot, we get a core, and then we're going to expand. Boom. We don't care that our opponent's walking in here. We're just going to be chrono boosting happily. And we're just going to try to repel this as much as possible. Now, what has Feast seen? Feast has seen these 2 barracks going down. This is always a very nice indicator. If you ever see someone go Marine, then instantly go for a reactor, you're going to have to be a little bit careful with that first zealot. You can't just march it off the way that we saw in the previous games, because you have to be careful about the Marauder with the concussive shell. But also one thing that I want to note, most importantly of all, if you're ever scared of something, don't be scared of it. Just make sure you know the timing of it. So you might say to yourself, I don't want to push with an early zealot. What if a Marauder with concussive shell kills me? Well, look at what Slayer's MMA did. There's one Marine. And then he's going to be building his barracks. Okay, cool. Pretty typically timed. There's a reactor plopping down right away. Oh, everything's been seen. Even getting somewhat of a later supply depot. Tech lab. Boink. Right when it finishes, concussive shell begins, which takes 1 full minute. Which means that if it's 5 minutes and 30 seconds, concussive shell is not done yet. Whoa! How awesome is that? Cool. I can be aggressive with this zealot, and if I'm at like 4 minutes and 50 seconds and I'm walking up to his base, I have not a fear about any marauders. The only thing I would fear is if he went for barracks and then immediate tech lab, which I would probably spot. Alright, cool. We're going to go ahead and we're chrono boosting this quite aggressively. When do we chrono boost it? Whenever we have energy to. Building ourselves these extra gateways. There's Zealot and Stalker moving out. We know that there's 2 barracks aggression coming because we can see it here on the minimap. And it looks like Feast is quite aware of this. In terms of defending against these 2 racks pushes, the place where you need to have power to warp in is here. It's very easy to do something like build a Nexus and build a pylon, because you do this at like all bases. Hell, if you expanded here, you'd be like Nexus pylon. Expand here, Nexus pylon. It's really easy. But you actually want to be behind there. It's actually better to go Nexus pylon right there. You want to make sure that the pylon is very, very defendable. So that's why Feast is planting this pylon so beautifully here. So this push is going to catch our hero Feast a little bit off guard. He actually gets his warp-ins done pretty much at the right time. But it's so easy to think that you need a lot of, force fields or guardian shields. If you just build stalkers, this early push actually ends up being pretty straightforward to defend against. Do some very typically nice control. Make sure that you pick off the SCVs there. Has to pull probes to pick this off a little bit, but the probes are really trying not to get too engaged in the fight. At this point in time, you look at your food count and you think, oh my gosh, Feast is in a world of trouble. He is just in a ton of pain. Look, he's losing all these stalkers. Yuck. It couldn't have gone any worse. However, stalkers are our friend in the early game. Cool, we barely held that off in the units lost tab. More lost for Feast in this other unit tab. Hey, we're not really that far behind in terms of probe count. And what are we going to go for when we do our Stalker aggression? We're going to be chrono boosting probes. That's the edge that we're trying to gain. So despite defending this very frightening, very scary 2-gate, or 2-barracks push, amazingly, MMA just is not going to have that much. Warping in Stalkers 3 at a time gets you a big army really fast. And MMA, with his one lone bunker, easily gets picked off. And what crushes Marines early on? Stalkers crush those Marines early on. This follow-up push is so devastating. So freaking devastating to your average Terran bear. And we're seeing Feast continue to keep it up. Because he has a little bit of nerve issues, we see that the probe production is not doubling up the way it should be. We should really be getting quite far ahead in terms of that worker count if we're really on the ball. Clearing it up. Slayer's MMA narrowly getting out in one piece. I'm not necessarily going to pull back and show this, but MMA rushed for stim and rushed for combat shield afterwards. It's highly unusual to see MMA, or actually to see any Terran, with all 3 of those upgrades, the concussive, the stim, and the combat shield. The Feast goes ahead and keeps pulling back, like it ain't no thing. And of course his big advantage is in the worker count, which allows Feast to do things like this. Look at this huge 7 frickin' gateways. What a nutcase. We've seen a pretty big variety of what Feast does at this point. In Game 1, we saw Feast... Excuse me for the squeaking. In Game 1, we saw Feast instantly go for a Robo. In Game 2, in Part 2, we saw Feast instantly go for a Twilight Council and get that Zealot speed upgrade and add on more gateways. In this third game, in Part 3, we're seeing him add on up to 7 gates now. The important thing is that he's doing different things in each circumstance based on what he's seeing. How wonderful. It's not this generic, ooh, I have to make certain that I build the Robo and scout him effectively every time. We can see clearly what paths our opponent can be going down. And for instance, in this one, sweet, I can delay as long as I please. I know my opponent is probably just going to be focusing on getting up this expansion. So Feast is quite honestly going for somewhat of an all-in-ish play here. I don't really want to say all-in. I more want to say that he's just going to try to end this game with a kill sequence. Now, one thing that really totally sucks is that the gold expansion is a big threat. Of course, when MMA's behind, he gets all his basic necessities up, and then he's just going to go straight for that gold, which is going to be a pretty significant problem. But again, we're going to see Feast use kind of the same logic here. As long as I'm pushing really aggressively with my gateway units, I can be adding on more and more and more probes at a rate faster than my opponent can. I probably would have preferred doing something like gotten 6 gates and then 1 forge instead of 7 gates. And then still probably been focusing on my probes and my upgrades. But Feast is really forcing these big confrontations. And MMA is going to try to get stuff up. And there's some interesting battling action that happens here. But you can envision if you were up against a Terran player who wasn't at the gold, but who was instead at his natural expansion. And you'd have a nice opportunity to do some serious work. And in that workers killed tab, we're seeing Feast do quite a lot of damage. 22 workers killed at this point in time. Still making those probes. 56 to 26, looking quite good. Stalker is so good against Marines. These medevacs hardly mean anything at this point. A lot of the army is so low that MMA is even leery of stimming. And we're seeing, little by little, a nice little edge appear. I will say, still think that one armory could have been nice. Or that one forge could have been nice for an armor upgrade. But you know, we're getting our third up. There's the target fire killing off the orbital command. And this moment surprised me quite a bit. When all of a sudden, Feast loses this whole army and just types GG. He is behind in terms of that food, but notice how far ahead he is in workers. And if we go to this army tab, obviously MMA has a way bigger army, and it is, I think, very likely going to end the game pretty soon, but we do have 7 freaking gateways. 7 gateways, probably would pull this back, probably have to sack this. But we killed off his gold. He has almost nothing left mining. His main's gone. Our main, though, is gone, and this expansion's, you know, having a little bit of trouble sustaining itself as well. We see about 575 minerals there. And that's one of the bigger patches. No, it's not. It's one of the smaller patches. Either way, he's about half to 2/3 mined out there. So, all in all, when I look at this game, I think that there's maybe some slight adjustments Feast could have made. I think he just kind of wanted to go for a big kill there. And it didn't work out with the 7 gate, and he was like, ugh, and ended up leaving. But you know what? Still, really close game with a style that you just don't see that much. You very often see players getting the colossi count going up early, getting a lot of immortals up for the aggression early. But we're seeing Feast cleverly just joink jump over big hills. Like, hell, my opponent is early expanding. I would love to go Zealot Archon. You know what? I'm going to attack with a bunch of Stalkers like he did in Part 2, and then I'm just going to go for Zealot Archon, because I know what he can't be doing right now, which is Cloaked Banshees or a lot of harassment or a lot of aggression. I can just go for it. Sweet. In Part number 3, oh my gosh, he did this crazy aggression. Well, I can hold it off with Stalkers and then just counter push with Stalkers again. Sweet. Really great flexibility. Love this build. Love this build. And interestingly enough, the first person I saw do this is my friend Tristan. Tristan from Team Palantir in the After Hours Gaming League. And it looks like Feast has been watching a little Tristan. Let's see here. Markio, question grabber, wonderful. Come on, question grabber. Come on, I want to take questions. I want to take your questions. Come on, give me all the questions. Give it to me. Give me the questions. Come on. Come on, give me the questions. F5, F5. Ask me questions, you guys. Make sure your question begins with Dear Day 9. Otherwise, a question grabber does not pick it up. Ha. Ha. Bearhammer says, Dear Day 9, how is the Terran still able to produce an army big enough to kill the Protoss when the Protoss had a huge economic advantage and should have been able to overwhelm the Terran? One of the reasons is he had a gold base. Even though the Terran was behind, he can send SCVs and mule up the gold, and it's suddenly the Terran instantly has a better economy. Actually, let me just go ahead and demonstrate that when we pop back to the 15-minute mark, where let me actually pull a little, just a smidge back. I have the income tab open right now in the game, and we see that immediately the Terran's starting to catch up. And this is just with 4 SCVs mining. And once these mules pop down, look at the economy, just suddenly, his income ends up being actually slightly more than the Protoss's, just thanks to the ownership of this gold. So that's one of the reasons, but the other big reason is that Stalkers are just a basic gateway unit mix with no upgrades at all, are only really good in small to medium numbers. Once you get to big numbers, Marine Marauder functions much better. The Marine Marauder are smaller, so they can pack together tightly, meaning that they can be, if you have like 5 Stalkers in a line firing, you can have way more Marauders than 5 firing back. which ends up being a big issue. Also, the zealots and the zealots basically evaporate due to the ability to kite. And this is not so much to say that the Terran army is way better than the Protoss army, but the basic units, the basic gateway units with no upgrades, can't withstand a Marine Marauder medevac force. They need charge, blink, you need a mass damaging spell like Storm or the Colossus. You will probably need some upgrades. You need to start going in one of those paths. So it's almost like I'm almost envisioning Feast's play in that circumstance is like when you're trying to push a spring back and you're trying to get it to the end and then you latch it and you can let it go, right? So he's pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and that last few seconds they needed to push and couldn't, boom, it just flung back and hit him in the face. That's what happens when you stay on a basic tech for too long. You have to really keep the pressure on. Let's see here. Stupid head. Day 9, when do you know not to put on early pressure with Stalkers? I have an answer for this, but I have a better answer. So the first answer is I know the timings, the situations where it's not so good, but what I'm going to tell you is to just attack, damn it. Just do it a lot and learn yourself. I don't want to put any idea in your head that you should hold back. You should go attack like crazy. You should go absolutely bear shit with your attacks, because I want you to get in the habit of feeling how great that early aggression is. I want you to feel it. When you're going, well, this doesn't feel like it'll work, but you know, day 9 made me do it, and then you go attack and you're like, day 9, I just want to rub that Stalker pressure all over my body. That's what I'm really in the mood for. Let us divine. Let's see here. Ha! The real Bonar says, day 9. What do you think about early Blink Stalker plays? Can these be done while going for early economic advantage? I will say the following, because I want to keep it in line with this, with these games. Blink Stalker Harass, you can view as the same effect as this regular Stalker Harass, except it happens a little bit later, and it's a little bit more versatile. We can pop into the main, do a little damage and poke around, and pop back out. We can easily pick off drops. We can even withstand huge marine pressure by having that blink up. The most important thing I would say is make certain that he is probably building a decent number of marines before you overcommit to those blink stalkers, just because you'll have some trouble in the early game otherwise. But I think it's great. I almost always get blink first in this matchup now. One more question. Great question from All Caps Rage and The Keeper 99. Day 9, if they Marauder Rush, would this build still work, or how would you adjust it? I actually don't worry that much about those Marauder Concussive Shell openings as much anymore. There's two things to note. First of all, when your probe gets into his base, you're not really going to have a hard time seeing what his barracks is up to. Case in point, we will look at now. Alright, speeding it up. Speeding it up. Alright, where's the barracks? Going to the everyone cam. Here comes our probe. In the base. Alright, so right now, we would be able to see if there was a tech lab popping up. Or hell, if he went for a tech lab right off the bat, we would spot it. This probe, all of a sudden, from our good friend Feast, gets the chance to see this reactor before he goes. You can almost always see this one coming. It's pretty straightforward to do. And if you saw it coming, you could do something like just chrono boost out a unit instead of the warp gate. I probably wouldn't end up chrono boosting out the unit though. I probably still would favor the warp gate. But I mean, you can do all sorts of things. Like for instance, right now, you could just go for 2 gateways if you saw that early reactor. Or excuse me, yeah, this early tech lab. You could just go for the 3 gateways right now and then expand. A lot of different choices that you have available. The important thing is, in this game, we saw the defense happen, and then the immediate counter swing did a ton of damage. It's the counter swing I want you to be most focused on. Feel free to adjust it a little bit, but make sure you're getting the warp gates as fast as possible. My gut instinct tells me that that's not actually going to be that difficult to defend. It's pretty easy to defend a fast tech lab marauder push with just 1 gateway. As long as you're making zealots and stalkers and not trying to do something fancy like go zealot sentry. It's really hard if you're going zealot sentry, but man, with just building stalkers, so good. Guys, I'm done. And you know where I'm going to go? Come on, tell me where I'm going to go. Come on. Come on, tell me where I'm going to go. Daily's done. Where am I going? Come on, say it. That's right, bipolar bear. And not like I'm bipolar, but au revoir, polar bear. I'm going to sushi. In particular, I just found this place that has all-you-can-eat sashimi. Oh, that's going to be so good. I like sushi. No daily on Sunday. It's Super Bowl Sunday, guys. Bye. Bye. Let's listen to something that's all about making